Welcome to Watching the Throne on the Late Night Chat Network, episode 17. Welcome back, everybody. Jay, you with
Hey,
us?
buddy.
Hey,
Yeah, I'm here, buddy. I'm here, man. I
apologies,
figured it out.
apologies, guys. Because that never seems to be perfect, is it? I gotta say, I mean, I'm sure Jay was gonna mention it there. He's coming down with some sort of maybe bronchial type deal over there, so if his voice sounds a little bit more grizzly than than usual, that's why, right, Jay?
It's okay, man. Yeah, it's okay. It is what it is, man. If you, you know,
Or Jay
uh,
not as sexy as usual to me earlier, and I was like, yeah, that's great.
it, it all depends on which way you look at it, right? I mean, listen to it. It's dropped a fucking decibel or few. I've been watching it on voice meter,
Yeah.
and if I don't like really try to push it out, yeah, the volume is low. Is a lot lower than it was the other day, right? So I,
And
I keep turning my gain up.
I gotta say, if you guys are steady watching these episodes, on the last two episodes, you may have heard some audio blips, beeps, and boops there, kind of coming out of the system every now and then. But that's before we kind of fine tuned everything in terms of the audio on JT's side there, because we've added some new equipment to our setups now recently. So I think we've got everything worked out. So yeah, I just figured I'd mention that at the top of the show in case you guys were like, "What the fuck is going on with the audio last episode?"
Yeah, we've had
I,
up until
I was
this
hearing it.
week.
I was certainly
Yeah.
hearing it in my side, guys. So it was kind of like a bleed through of audio coming from my end, coming through JT's end while we're recording. So it was something that was kind of distracting me. So if even some of the conversation wasn't as as enjoyable as it was is normally when we're covering things, it was just a little peek behind the curtain. I was dealing with that all the last
Oh,
right.
it
So
drove Nico crazy, guys. It kept him up all week, man, to figure out what the fuck the problem was. But I think he figured it out. Like I said, I get a little crackle when we all talk, when the both of us talk, or whatever. But it's not like a feed through, and you don't always get it, so it's pretty good. It's actually 100% better than before, man. So a lot of work and kudos to you, Nico.
oh, thanks, man. That's not that I was seeking more praise. You did thank me already on the show this past week. Thank you for that. But more just to
Uh,
kind of give people an update, just to let them know that we're on top of it, right? In case you guys notice some audio issues there, right? We do care about that kind of stuff here on the channel, right? So
Yeah, it's not only learning about TV shows and movies and stuff like that, it's also learning about audio equipment and all the fun stuff that comes along with computers and audio. It's not just plug and play, everybody,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
Times,
So,
times. So this episode today we're talking about Game of Thrones season 2, episode 7, A Man Without Honor. And what'd you think of this one, Jay?
well, I'm on the wrong one. I went too far. I watched my page. I thought I was on, I thought we had did this one, but maybe, yeah, because I started with one pen, it ran out, and I had to start with a new pen. So, yeah. Yeah, this one was interesting, and then like I said, yeah, I'm starting to see some stuff. Well, I'm thinking I'm starting to see some stuff brewing and things changing, and um, I don't know what the hell's going on, to be honest with you, but um, yeah, and like I said, we're also getting introduced to different people, uh, types of people, characters. Not seeing as many of the characters I noticed from season one in
Mhm.
as many scenes this time. Um, you get the little co-stars and stuff like that. The little the guys with the small, well, the bigger stories, but the smaller, like style actors. No pun intended when it comes to um, uh,
Tyrion.
Tyrion. Yeah, but yeah, so it's weird. I mean, great. I'm enjoying the storytelling so far, but like I said, I don't want to. I'm worried about my feelings being hurt. You know, they get hurt a lot, so
Well, listen,
or yeah, I take it the wrong way, so I'm gonna get mad and write these Game of Thrones guys a fucking letter after,
it's
and
always
you know,
it's always a something to be worried about while watching this show. So, I don't want I don't want you to let your guard down, Jay. Just be ready for it at every turn, right? You never know what can happen in this show. But that's part of the great part about this show, especially going into season 3, which we're almost at. I think it's kind of like it really kicks into high gear starting with season 3. I think a lot of the events that occur in season to season in these next few ones. So I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, as interesting as the first one was and crazy of an ending that was, I feel like they're really, and we've said it every time we've reviewed an episode during this season. While there's been some great moments, still, it's been an interesting slow build. I think a lot of character development, a lot of introduction of new characters. So I think that's kind of been the main focus of this season so far, right? And just because everything changed up and everybody went in their own directions at the end of the first season, as we know, right? So I think this season is important for that and that amongst other things. I think this is the main reason why season 2 is important. As much as I've talked to other people and they say this isn't one of their favorite seasons, and I would agree. I mean, in comparison to what's to come, still, but it's not bad. It's certainly not bad. I'm enjoying the watch still.
I feel like it's a character builder of some people, and that if they're gonna stick around for a little longer, I don't know how long these guys will be around for, or where they're at right now. So I mean, I can understand why they do in a season like this. I mean, they have one in the bag that was, the first one was probably top of the charts when it came out. So, they had one to build on for a third season, because then you hit for the third season, and then what happens then? Then you get a real contract to see if you're going 8 to 10 years in a deal, right? So you gotta know how to weigh your. It's kind of like buying and trading, a sports player. Same thing.
Well, I mean, like, I think this episode even reminded us, as we'll get into here in a moment, that like people like Jamie really haven't been highlighted in the season at all, like so far. Like, and even in these first 2 seasons, he shows up here and there, but he's not really one of the, I would say, main characters at this point, right? Like he's referenced a lot more than I think we see him on screen, right? Like he doesn't have
Oh, I mean, it's,
like, I know he's been in captivity, like as a prisoner this whole time, but like I barely think or if did we see him this season maybe once so far, like prior to this, right? Like it's
couple, yeah, like once or twice. But I mean,
short,
same thing.
short scenes,
Uh,
right? Like nothing crazy, like short scenes though, right? And I think like again, like moving forward, again, without spoiling anything, this guy is a big character on this show, right? This is there's going to be some people that are going to get more shine, I think, as the time goes on as well. Like you're going to see it shift. You're going to see more time spent with certain people, less time with other people that we spent so much time with at this point, right? And like you said, as the characters develop, I think that's just kind of natural to see what's maybe some of the more interesting storylines or which characters people are really latching on to, right? I mean, the story's the story, and I think they follow the books close enough from what I understand the source material,
mhm.
I think that in terms of like what they really are choosing to focus on, you're gonna start seeing that shift as the seasons go on as well.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, right? Like, I haven't seen much of your buddy there, the little king, um,
Tyrion? No,
Joffrey.
no, Joffrey. Well, no one wants to
You
see
know,
him.
Tyrion's got at least one scene I saw so far in every episode near the end, right? Like, I mean, that's why you can see his credit as the first one, right, on the IMDb. But yeah, other than that, you're not seeing other people as much. There's the little brothers maybe and stuff like that. Like they're referencing them all the time, right?
Yeah.
So,
All right, so let's get into it without further ado. So
all
this
right.
episode starts off with Theon waking up after his night of hooking up with Osha at the end of the last episode, and he gives his men shit for letting Bran get away there. He basically beats the shit out of one of them as a result, and he gets the horses and the hounds after them. He basically is like, well, we got to fucking get these kids because, as we know, after Osha hooked up with Theon at the end of last episode when he was sleeping, she snuck out, killed the guard, went off with Hodor and his brother Rickon. Is it Riken or Riken? I think his name is, and yeah, and Brian fucking all flew the coop there at the end of the last
Yeah,
episode. So
the little guys.
they're on the run, right? So him and his brother and Hodor and Osha, right, who were basically have been looking after him as in Winterfell this whole time.
Yeah.
Then you see all of them traveling after that scene, and through the woods and stuff, and they come up on a farm. And in passing, his brother, I think it's Rickon. He how do you pronounce this? Rickon or Riken? Rikon? I think it's that. I pronounce it like that.
I'm just trying to find the name here for you.
Right. Rickon doesn't so Riken.
Well, if you can't pronounce it, I mean, it's probably going to be harder for me to pronounce it. But let's see if I could find the name here. It's probably further down.
They come up on a farm though, and he mentions in passing that he says that he knows the boys that live there. He's mentioning names, and he knows the people that live there, and they're
Oh,
questioning.
the farmer.
Yeah, they were questioning whether or not they should, like go and hide there, and they're like, no, we can't do that, because they're gonna look there, and I don't want to bring kind of heat to these people, so they decide not to go and kind of seek aid from them, even though they're on the run, right?
Rickon, yeah, Rickon, right?
Yeah, so I guess that's how you say it. I don't know if it's pronounced Riken or Rickon. I forget.
Yeah,
I can't really say it all.
they could probably say it Rikon, right? Like who knows, right? Like, so, but yeah, I get you. Okay, that's it. I see the name now.
Yeah,
I went right over it.
yeah. But then we cut over to John waking up with the wildling woman, and they get back to walking. She questions, if the Night's Watch actually sleep with women or not.
Yeah, this was a good one, eh? Lots to write down in this one.
Kind of fucking with him, saying, "Oh, do you guys just sleep with each other? Do you like women?" He's like, "Yeah, we like." He's like, "I like women," and he's like, "I'm sorry, but we took an oath.
Jerk off. Yeah.
Took an oath. Can't do anything about it. They're married to the job, essentially. These fucking guys, right?" So
it's funny because she's literally leaning in towards you in your hand. She says,
right.
"You guys in your hand." Like it's just funny the way, if you catch the jokes from the way they're trying to say it, like an olden day style way of saying the jokes, and politely or whatever. I don't know if you try to be politely that way, or it's even ruder when you say it that way, because I'm used to hearing jerk off, but you know what I mean? When you say it the way she said it.
Yeah, it's much more elegant. Here, this is how you say it.
I was more embarrassed.
Rickon.
Rickens? Okay. Well, that's how Google says it, so we'll believe her for now.
Go with that, Rickon Stark. So
how does Siri say it, dude? You got them both. No, that'd be hilarious to see what the difference is between the two of them. He's got some.
Hey Siri, how do you pronounce Rickon Stark from Game of Thrones? Let's see here.
Rickon Stark.
Yeah.
Rickon Stark. She says it more.
I think it pulled up a video. It just pulled up a video. So there you go. It doesn't. It's not in the mood to talk. Apparently, I think it just had it muted. That's why. But Rickon Stark. So there you go. There's two bots telling us how to say it, guys.
There you go. Choose the favorite.
But basically, she calls him a sheep, and then questions, why they do what they do exactly. Basically, she's saying that they just take orders and do whatever the fuck they want them to do, and why they can't, why he doesn't choose to live free like they do. Like, what are they fighting for? And basically, like, she lets them know that, like, these were our lands to begin with. So why are you fighting us for them? And it seems like they both feel like they have a right to the land that they're fighting over. So it's kind of like, if you look at it in the way of like the Aboriginals or something like that, you know what I mean? Like, it's something sort of kind of like that, where they're like, yeah, we live, we were part of this land before you, and it's kind of like a little back and forth, kind of trying to understand one another in this scene, in that sense. And by the end of it, like, John doesn't really have an answer for her, because he's kind of like sworn to duty, and he's kind of just following blindly, like, whatever these guys believe in. And there's been a lot of that kind of in this season so far, as he's trying to get, like, getting deeper into the job, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, there's been a
trying to figure himself out too.
Yeah, he's questioning himself, and why he does what he does, and why they do what they do, and his place in this world. You know what I mean? Which a lot of people young at this age experience, right? So I think it's
Well,
kind of yeah.
she's smart getting it into her head too, like getting into his the way she talks by getting into his head. You know, she brought up the facts of it, like she tried bringing it, like she was talking about his father Ned
Yeah.
and all that, right? Like so, she's really trying to manipulate him. You can kind of see, but I don't know. I'm starting to wonder, does she like? I mean, she must have a wet spot for him. You know what I mean? No,
Yeah, well, at this point, she's definitely working them. That's for sure, though. So, I
oh,
mean, then you got, then we cut over to Tywin. He finds Wolf's Bane on the person who got killed, who dropped at his door at the in the last episode, which was killed by that dude that owed Arya the favor of killing 3 people for her, right? So, the
yeah,
guy dropped dead at the door right before he got to him to kind of deliver that message. He kind of they found Wolf's Bane on him, and he basically he's convinced like someone sent an assassin to kill him essentially, right? And he
yeah.
result of the war with Rob that maybe someone came after him, right? And Tywin then offers that Arya eat at his table because they're eating a mutton and he's not a fan of it, so he allows her to sit at the table and eat with him, like basically while talking to him. And
What
he's
is that though? I was trying to figure it out. Like,
mutton.
what is that? Yeah, mutton. What the fuck is with that? What is that? Like I seen her. She's just. It looks like she's just scrambling a bunch of shit together, right? Like it really does when she's cooking it, right?
I think it's like a meatloaf or something like that. I want to say there was an episode of Seinfeld, a famous episode where there's Jerry's dating a woman that Lane knows, and she keeps feeding him mutton, and like he pretends that he likes it, and meanwhile he's taking the mutton and he's putting it in these napkins. And he's like putting it in his pockets and hiding it, right? Then later on, Lane gets attacked by these dogs because there's meat in her pockets, right? And she doesn't know it because she borrowed his jacket. Look it up.
Like he's pretty a mutiny. What am I spelling, bro?
Mutiny. I know what that is. That's not a meat. That's for sure.
No, no. So mutt, like a dog. Two T's.
MUTTON.
Oh, mutton meat. There it is. Let's see what mutton meat is. All lamb and mutton. So it's a kind of sheep. I think it's sheep
Oh, it's
and
sheep.
lamb. I would
Okay.
think it's sheep and lamb because they're classifying or goat and lamb, right? Yeah.
Probably a bunch of meats together, like leftover fucking meats from like a bunch of shit, probably, right? Like a meat.
Yeah, I mean,
Meat.
they probably wanted the skin and stuff like that. They're easier to raise as sheep than all the carrying cattle around everywhere. So I would think that, yeah,
So
yeah,
Tywin's been So Tywin's been kind of enjoying his time. It seems like just chatting with Arya while he's been kind of here, and in this,
yeah,
he basically tells her that this will be his last war, win or lose. And he mentions the fact that they're now calling this the War of Five Kings because there is 5 people now vying for the throne, like people that are trying to basically take the Iron Throne at the moment. And he's kind of caught up in this, right? And
yeah.
he says, this is going to be one that he'll be remembered for his legacy, essentially. Like, so he feels like no matter what goes down with this, like being involved in this one, and I guess because of the fact that he's getting older, he feels that this is going to be the one that he goes down in the history books, right? And
Can't you can't be the king forever like that. You know what I mean? There's like well, eventually you got to fall, right?
Mhm. And then
Yeah,
Jay, they start talking about Aegon Targaryen, and Arya
yeah, I
kind of
noticed.
brings up about his sisters, and kind of starts talking about that. And there's a lot of talk here of maybe things to come that we're going to see in House of the Dragons, guys. Like I mean, again, we don't really
Well,
have anything to rep other than the names. We don't really have anything to go off of, like based off of, like, you know what I mean, like but it's very possible, like the things that they're talking about we haven't seen play out all of them as of yet, right? So
he's
uh
talking like 300. He said something about this is I wrote this down because I wasn't understanding it right. Because since we've watched the new one already, the prequel or whatever. Um, it says that Aegon Targaryen changed all the rules, right? About like 300 years ago with the dragons, right? So he's had them, even though they're at like, so that means where they're at 120 something years or 170 years, what they're talking about on House of Dragons.
mhm,
That means that's got to be near the end of the dragons in a sense,
mhm.
because if he's talking like 300 years ago
Well,
is when the rules were changed, right?
we've already been introduced to Aegon Targaryen on the show. He's
Yeah,
one of the younger ones, like one of the guys that's like fighting on the dragons and stuff there, right? So like he if not that guy. I have the picture of him here. I can bring it up here for you. 1 second.
Yeah, because he's not obviously in the show anymore. Well, in this one.
There you go.
Dun-dun-dun. Yeah.
Well,
This
he's
guy
not,
in the back with the patch, right?
no, I think it's the
Oh, the
front.
one in the front?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have already seen him on that show who they're referencing, right? But then they talk about sisters and they talk about Valerian Steel and they mention a bunch of shit that probably hasn't come to fruition as of yet on the actual House of the Dragon show. But so it's hard even to kind of, and this is what I was trying to say to you, Jay, like
I
to
wrote those down.
that they talk about throughout this show without having the actual without having the reference for it, because House of the Dragons wasn't a thing at that time. They're all just talking about past occurrences. And I gotta say, the thing I liked about this show is they didn't do that shit where they're like, oh yeah, like in the past, and then they show you like past stuff that happened. Like I don't love when shows do that all the time when they're bouncing around and past and present type shit. Like sometimes they can do it well, sometimes not so much. And I
Yeah,
like,
and I hate especially when they don't put the time frame, their stamp, where they're going. Sometimes it really fucks with you if you're watching a show.
but not only that, like it's kind of sometimes distracting and takes away from the storyline that they're already telling in this show. Like them referencing it, maybe knowing somewhere down the line we would get a House of the Dragons or maybe something like that where they can actually explore this kind of stuff that they're talking about hundreds of years earlier. That's cool. I actually like the approach that they kind of just they'll reference it, but you, unless you know it or you've read the books at this point in time, you're not going to know really like, everything they're talking about, right? But now that we're watching the show, we can start to connect the dots on some of the things maybe that they reference from that show or things that we're going to be seeing soon, right? So that's kind of cool. I like how that's kind of coming to be now a little bit, right?
Yeah, they even mention the names and stuff, right? Like, so I'm wondering if they're going to use those in the actual House of Dragons show,
Mhm.
or if it's pre-House of Dragons. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Because it could be also pre-House of Dragons, right? So that'd be interesting. And I don't mind if House of Dragons does the goes back a little bit. You know what I mean? Because
No, I don't.
they're not really doing nothing before that, so they might have to touch on stuff.
No, because no, I don't think so. I don't think they're going any farther back because you got to remember they've already time jumped in that show like 3 times already. So, like, you know what I
I
mean?
know, man.
Or twice, I should say. So, like,
Yeah,
it's not like they're moving forward. They have so many years to cover prior to Game of Thrones that they have to just keep moving forward, right? Like, they have to. I don't think they're going to go back any further. I hear what you're saying about House of Dragons, but I doubt it. I mean, because again, if they're going to reference stuff in that House of Dragons, stuff that came before then, even, I think this is, I don't think they're going to go any further back than this because, like, anything anybody talks about on this show so far that happened in the past is about the Targaryen. So as long as they cover that, I think that we're good. Like, and there's other houses that they can cover too and talk about certain aspects of the
well,
world.
Tyrell was around back then. There's a few of them that were around that still are around to this day.
But the Targaryens are what's talked about the most because of their time that they ruled in Westeros in this show.
Yeah,
That's what's talked. Mad King, all this shit is, and the Mad King is
they
obviously
ruled.
sooner because Jamie's
Yeah.
the one that took him out. So that's like, if they reach that point in terms of the end of House of Dragon, that probably could take another 2 seasons, possibly, maybe to get to that point, right? So that's, we'll see what ends up happening with that. Because I would love to see them do that and recast like a younger Jamie or something and show that all go down. Because again, it's only been referenced. It's referenced all the time in this show, but we didn't see it, right? We're just going off of what they said.
I mean, they could actually use him. He doesn't look that old still in his picture. So, I mean, they can really, just a little makeup would probably make him look younger again.
Right. So, then she says me lord or my lord, or she said my lord. And like, he basically corrects her, before their conversation's over and basically says, like, I could tell, like, you're too smart for your own good. Like the way that you're saying me lord or whatever, or my lord, right? He's like, you sound like, like you're from royalty, essentially. He's like, and she's like, oh, my father, my mother or whatever, my family taught me how to speak properly. Right. And she kind of throws it face and he's like, hey, watch your tongue, girl. He's like, I enjoy her talks, but right, because he's like,
don't talk back to me, basically.
Yeah, because he says to her, wow, again, he keeps mentioning this. He's like, wow, where do you know this from? Like, she's surprised at how well educated she is constantly. And like, even though he enjoys their talks, like that's why he kind of gets more out of the conversations than he expects from this kid, right? But then every time he says it, he's like, well, your father must have been a really well-read stonemason or whatever. And then she kind of makes a comment back to him about that. Oh, do you know many stonemasons? Right? I've never met
Yeah,
him.
yeah.
Right? It's like, do you know any stonemasons? And he's
She's
like, hey,
quick, eh?
watch it, girl. You know, I
She's
like her.
fucking theirs, man. She's smart.
Then we cut to a quick scene between Sansa where she thanks the mountain basically for helping her out, almost like after she got raped in the last episode. And he isn't pleasant with her. He kind of just shuts it right down and does not return any of the kind of, you know what I mean? Like her thanking him does not return any of the pleasantries, doesn't smile at her, kind of is just like, it's in my nature. I love killing, basically she's like, why are you so hateful? It's like, one of these days, my hateful ways is actually going to protect you when you become queen. So you'll thank me then, essentially. Right. And like,
Yeah.
you can tell he's just not for the chit chat, this guy, right? He's just like, yeah, get the fuck
He's not
out
the
of
social type. We know some people like that, man. Fuck. People are for the social type, They don't like to talk sometimes.
here. Then we cut over to Daenerys, who she's
Oh,
speaks with Zaro about her missing dragons, who's like, the black guy that's part of the 13, right? The guy who basically wants to wed her. And she wants them back. She makes it very clear because, they've gone missing at the end of the last episode. She doesn't know what the hell's going on. And he's kind of like, going on about different things. She doesn't really want to hear it from him. She just wants answers and she wants to know where the dragons are now. And, she kind of makes that very clear to him, right?
yeah.
Again, quick scene, and then we cut back to the wildling situation with John, and they talk about
So she's on a leash. I like how, yeah, that's the one thing that stood out to me. Sorry, man. That's the one thing that stood out to me. She was on a leash. They were allowed to do that back then.
well, they're still slaves at this time. But yeah, Wildling, she's talking to John there about what true freedom is, and shares her perspective on life and how, you know, basically that how people would want to sleep with him if he became part of like their group, essentially, right? Like,
She wants to bang him. She's letting it. She's leaning like if he's too. You could tell he's a fucking virgin. He's too fucking naive. He's too dumb to even notice that she's hitting on him. For
yeah.
fuck's
Well,
sakes.
so there, to your point, uh,
Yeah.
but I mean, again, it's hard to tell in this situation because she is his captive, whether or not she wants to bang him or not, right? She could always try to fucking run off after she bangs him. You never know, right? But to your point, one of the most famous quotes from this show happens in this scene where she says, "I can teach you how to do it," and he's like, "I know how to do it," and she's like, "You know nothing, Jon Snow," which is one of the most famous quotes from the show. Actually, "You know nothing, Jon Snow." Basically, it's one of the ones I think a lot of people have really latched onto over time, basically, because just she's so like just throws it
You
right
want to
in the face,
you
like
want to repeat that because you froze a little.
oh, did I? She says, "I
Yeah.
can teach you how to do it," and he says, "I know how to do it," and she's like, "You know nothing, Jon Snow," like in that scene, like so. The you know nothing, Jon Snow is a very famous, popular show that a lot of people loved, right? So one that I think on like T-shirts and stuff like that, like
Really?
yeah, not the whole thing, but just that you know nothing, Jon Snow. For whatever reason, like that was a very popular quote. I think that came out of the time that the show was on the air, right? So I think people, whenever they would talk about Jon Snow, would just throw it out there, right? Because it was just such a quick comeback on her part to say that, right? And it's so true because, like you said, he's a virgin. He doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about from experience, and not even
No.
when it comes to that, not even when it comes to being a ranger for the Night's Watch, or even a stranger in this land outside the wall. This key is, yeah, he doesn't know anything, right? Like he's acting like he knows it all, but he doesn't. He's very, like you said, he's very green.
Yeah, he holds himself very high, but he's kind of he plays the role, right? He knows how he's basically playing the role right now because he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. He's just going along with the flow.
So then in this scene, Rob gets a message delivered from King's Landing of what Cersei said of the note that was delivered there. And this is one of their, the Lannisters' cousins, essentially, that delivers this note that they left alive to bring it back to him. Or I guess Rob, basically he's been being bounced back and forth, this guy. Like Rob is the one that sent him over there after they killed a bunch of them, and then they sent him back. So this guy's been just fucking traveling, sending messages back and forth between these two groups, right? And after this message gets delivered, he basically puts him in captivity with the Kingslayer, with Jaime, his cousin there. And then he ends up speaking to what's her name here, Talisa, the woman who's like basically the medic that he has a crush on, right? He ends up speaking to her in this scene, and she lets him know that she needs more supplies, that she's run out, and silk, for instance, to do sutures and shit like that, right? He essentially agrees to drop everything and help her, of course, because this man is in love with her, right? So he,
Oh yeah, you could tell.
even though
But
he promised to another, he's adamant about how he's gonna help her with this task because it's important.
well, they had a good conversation too. Like she gave a little bit of her history too, right? About how she became, how she went from reading books to fucking putting sutures and cutting people's legs off, and
Not in this
I
scene.
mean, no, I don't have it written down anywhere else. I thought I no.
No, that's later.
Oh,
I don't know, but that is later when that
okay,
they do
all
have a
right.
good chat. They do have a good chat in this scene, though. But
And
this
this one too, right?
is the one where I think they discuss the fact that um maybe I'm wrong, but I think this is where they mention also, and maybe this happens later. I think there is a discussion at some point where they talk about why she's also treating the other people on the battlefield and not just their people. That might be after as well, but I don't. I know what scene, what conversation you're talking about, and that doesn't come till later. I think that one.
Okay, okay. No, I thought maybe I wrote it. I mean, maybe I wrote it down wrong. I don't know.
Uh,
I
Basically,
literally write out scene for scene, man. I keep trying to do smaller notes, man, and they just seem to get longer. There's more information I want to not forget, right?
definitely discusses like how she why she's doing this, like, but if you're talking about the story that she explains to him as to what happened to her to make her become this person, then that's not till I think the next episode.
Oh, well, I don't think so. Okay, but okay, go on.
Well, we'll go by what you're saying then.
Yeah, yeah. No, well, let's just keep it going.
uh
Right.
Listen, it's Nico Stats, all right. I know every
Fucking Nico Stats.
I know every Game of Thrones, you fucker. Get out of here.
You're gonna get in trouble. You stole her name. It's copyright.
Basically though, then we
Then
cut
you go to
over to
Theon.
Theon. He struggles to find Bran. He treats people like shit. Sends the Meister home essentially. They believe they have a clue. No, sorry. They believe they have an idea essentially of what to do in this scene, which we don't know because it doesn't happen till later, right? We find this out, but basically,
Yeah,
him and the guy who's basically been nudging him in this direction to kind of get people to respect him this whole time, his right hand man, that's part of his crew, this guy that keeps putting the bug in his ear, Theon, it seems like, which is very problematic so far. He's the one who basically, they look at each other and it seems like they come up with it seems like, oh, maybe they figured out where they're hiding, or but there's a quick exchange that these two have, and he says, yeah, send the old man home, and he sends the Meister dude, that basically
he's
Maester.
being an old man. Like, really, dude. Like, I had some respect for him last episode, little Theon, but now he's being an old man. Like for answers, like fucking guy, man.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
so
know the guy might only be 30 in the actual episode, right? Because it's not 17. Like,
and we're at the farm too right now. This is where they are. They kind of came upon the farm at this point, the one that when they're all on in pursuit of Bran and everybody, right? So
yeah.
but yeah, so then we cut back over to Daenerys. She's visited by Jorah Mormont. He regrets
He's
leaving her.
back, right?
Yeah, well, he left for a bit there, and he regrets leaving her alone because obviously that's when this whole dragon shit went down. And Daenerys is now doubtful of herself now in light of what has happened, the fact that people had died for her as a result of all this, the fact that nobody will align themselves with her. She's very doubtful now about this whole idea of her, becoming this person and actually going after the Iron Throne. Like, she was kind of really gung ho when she first made it to the city, but then she's kind of been hit with like a bunch of rejections, and now there's they stole the shit right under her nose. So she's
Yeah.
really down on herself right now, right? And she tells Jorah to find her dragons. Essentially, she because he's kind of like, oh, Khaleesi, what can I do for you? The guy's always talking like that,
Yeah,
right?
he wants to help her out. You could see.
He wants
I'm
something.
wondering if he stole the dragons at first. I was wondering. I was like, maybe he's
Sure.
got him hidden, and he can bring him right back to her.
So he's tasked with finding the dragons here in this scene. So
Mm.
then we cut back to the wildling woman there who tries to come on to John again. And in this scene again here, she ends up actually knocking him down as a result of this and fleeing from him, and then meeting up with a bunch of other wildlings up on like the ridge there, up on the mountain there, where they're kind of, as he's trying to chase her up it. And basically, ends up not finding any of his other fellow night watchmen in this scene, and gets surrounded by a bunch of them. So he's caught now. Like he's got now he's basically prisoner to the wildlings, essentially, Jon Snow. So he's fucked right now. So then we cut over to Sansa. She's having bad dreams of the incident that almost occurred where she got raped the episode prior to, and she wakes up to having gotten her period for the first time. And
Yay!
yeah, exactly. And
It's a special moment for her.
y'all know what that means. She can now be deflowered and taken advantage of by her king there, so they can have
It's
children.
Joffrey time. Bang, bang, bang. No.
So what's her name? Shay, who is Tyrion's whore. Or the woman that's basically posing as like her hair maiden. Essentially, she walks in, finds her freaking out because she's kind of like, freaking out and yelling and stuff in the morning. And then she sees that she got in her period on the bed, and then in some sort of quick desperation move, they go and try to flip over this fucking king size mattress in the time of kings, guys. This mattress is huge, and these are
huge
women. They're trying to flip this fucking mattress over. Then another one of her servants comes in, sees the blood on the bed, runs out, and fucking Shay, without even questioning for a moment what's happening, grabs a knife, runs after her, puts the knife to her fucking throat, and says you're not fucking telling anybody of what you just saw in there, essentially, right? Because she's trying to help her out because she knows that she's gonna now have to have sex with Joffrey, and she does not want to kind of be wed into this.
No.
Because she's basically being held prisoner there. As much as she's trying to play the part by saying, "Oh yeah, I love Joffrey" and all this other shit, you can tell that she's that's not what she wants, right? Especially everything happening, right? So she's just doing what she has to do to survive, right? So I think she runs back to the room, and by that time already, unfortunately, the Mountain is now standing beside her in the bed, and he sees obviously what's going down, and the jig is up, right? So he obviously goes and tells her about this.
Yeah, it kind of sucks, man, when somebody's writing out. Sorry, his paper fucking ruffling.
It's all right. Yeah, that was really shitty, right? So then we cut to a scene now. Of course, right away that he told her, because Cersei speaks to Sansa about giving birth and the privilege of all that, and basically how her births went. She kind of is reminiscing about some of her past births, and she mentions the fact about how how the devotion that Jaime showed in those moments.
Well, Robert was never around, right?
Yeah,
he always seemed to take off.
And she mentions to her that Joffrey will not show that type of devotion, and basically how difficult he was raising, right? So even the mother now is
she knows.
Yeah, even the mother's yeah, I'm sorry about him. He's an asshole.
Yeah, I fucked up on that one. Yeah, is basically what she's saying. Yeah,
much. And then by the end of the conversation, she's like, listen, I'm going to give you a piece of advice. The more people you love, the weaker you are. That's what she said.
That's a good one, eh?
And it ends
with I gotta learn that one. I gotta take that one in, eh? You know what? It's so true. I actually rewound it so I could write the quote.
Because you open yourself up to more as a result, and you're more. That's what she means.
Vulnerable.
Exactly, vulnerable. And then the scene ends with her asking her, "Well, shouldn't I love Joffrey?" And she's like, "You could try." You could try.
Yeah, man.
It's a difficult one.
Imagine that.
Good luck.
Your mom saying that to your girlfriend. Hey, you could try.
It just goes to show you how much of a fucking charade this whole thing is. This is fucking crazy what's going on here now, right?
Incest doesn't pay, everybody. Apparently.
Speaking of Jaime, we cut back over to him locked up, and he basically speaks to his relative there, his cousin, about how they're related, and he says, "Which one are you again?" Doesn't remember which Lannister he is, and then he basically, he's like, "Yeah, my mother was Cinda Lannister." He's like, "Is she the fat one?" He's like, "Well, she's gotten bigger." "Oh, you'd know if she was the fat one. There's only one fat Lannister." Jamie has some entertaining lines in these scenes. It's pretty good,
Yeah.
right? And then, anyways, he proceeds to basically let him know that he squired for him at one point, and basically lets him know like how much he looked up to him at that time. And then Jamie kind of goes on to say, like, then he starts reminiscing about stuff and says, "Yeah, well, I was young like you one time." And he's like, he says, like, I can relate. And he's like, "How the hell can you relate?" He's like, "Well, when I was 16, I was somebody's squire." And he basically lets him know about how at the time, like, he looked up to that person as well, right? Because like they were known as some, powerful kind of warrior type dude.
Or, yeah.
So like, and the same way that Jamie and other knights and stuff, or people that are squires looking to become knights, looked up to him, right? So,
Mhm.
so he's kind of like, they're kind of, reminiscing about better times, both of these guys, and he's kind of trying to, trying to get on his good side and relate to this dude, right? So, we find out in a moment why. So,
Why? Yeah, exactly. There's always a reason, man. No, I'm starting to realize that there's always a reason they're nice to other people that they don't know.
and he basically tells him, how lucky he is for being who he is, because he wouldn't have been good at much else, Jamie says. And this is when the cousin asks him, if he has thought of a plan to escape during this time, and he basically says, yeah, it wasn't possible before, and but now I think it is. And if you wanted to help, and he's like, oh yeah, anything, just let me know what you have to do. And Jamie comes in very close to him, because there's only one guy kind of walking back and forth outside of like their imprisonment, like their cage there. And he turns to him. He's like, "Well, all you got to do is die." And he fucking grabs him and fucking starts beating him up, like killing him,
Strangling, yeah,
strangling him, beating up him on the ground. And
yeah.
then because of all the commotion, he starts like he starts like he starts seizing. Right, this guy's all fucked up after getting hit, and he starts like fucking like moving around on in the dirt with his face down. So then the guard who's watching the place catches wind of this and comes
Yeah.
in. He runs in to kind of check on him, and when that happens, Jamie comes up from behind him, chokes the life out of him, and basically escapes as a result. Right?
He takes the keys, no, or whatever he took. He grabs something from his thing there, his belt. But
Very
there was
slick.
a part there just before he said that to when dreams could become reality, about when he was being a squire, right? When dreams become reality. So maybe that's what he was kind of hinting off to, in a sense, like to be the, because he's not a good prisoner, but Ned Stark was, right?
Yeah, he says that. He's like, I'm not fit for this, right? Like he basically,
Yeah.
right? He's a pretty boy. He shouldn't be in the fucking
Oh, tied up to the fucking wall there.
covered in their own shit, as he says, right? Their own feces, or whatever the hell he says, right? Yeah, so
Well, the sad thing is, I mean, if anybody knows that if Ned Stark was a good prisoner, it was Jamie, right? So
but then we cut back over to Jorah. Jorah Mormont approaches that woman with the mask that we saw in the city previously, in that bazaar or whatever. We seen her in that one scene, and she kind of seemed to like be intuitive about a lot of shit. Like she knew stuff that went on in this city, and she kind of questioned Jorah the last time they met. Right? They had a weird moment. So
she's kind of funny looking. I mean, she's got this. I mean, it's a nice pattern. Don't get me wrong, bro. Look, I mean, it's nice, right? But and I'm not getting it. I don't know. I know she's what she
yeah,
like. I'm trying to wonder what her face looks like underneath there. You know?
that's a cool getup. I like that. Right? It's kind of neat. So but she seems to know, kind of like she's like the whisperer of this area. It seems like, you know what I mean? Like Lord Varys of this city. Essentially, it seems like she knows, the goings on, right? And she basically says to him as he's talking to her, because he's asking her where the dragons are, and he's like, "Oh, do you know where the dragons are?" And then she's like, "Oh, you love her, don't you?" Like she can tell right away, and he doesn't answer her. He's just like, "Tell me where the dragons are. Like who has them?" And she basically says to him, and this is interesting how she says this though.
Yeah, I know.
He says, would you ever betray her again? Now, at this point, as the viewer, I don't think we are supposed to know, or do we know what he's exactly done at this point in time to betray her, right? Like, I don't think we've seen this as of yet. I don't think it's actually happened as viewers. So he kind of he just says, yeah, no, I would never betray her again. So I don't know what she was referencing there, but she clearly knows something that we don't, I think, as viewers, right? Because I don't think we've seen him betray her in any sense as of yet, right?
Oh
So
yeah, not that I could think of, right? Unless it was the walking away part.
that could be it. That could be it. But she says that to him, and he says, no, never. And she's like, yeah, well, listen, the person who stole them are with her now. And he fucking runs off, right? And then we cut to a scene of her speaking to the council of the 13 people there, the merchants. And the spice merchant basically says, yeah, even if I did know where the dragons were, I wouldn't help you get them because like they're only going to bring this death and destruction upon us. Why the fuck would I help you? And again, he's the most logical of all these people. He's been kind of speaking outright to her and kind of being an asshole to her this whole time, right? And you know, he basically though, then the warlock dude that's sitting at this council speaks up, who we've seen obviously in the previous episode. And he basically says, "Oh yeah, how dare you basically say that to this?" He says to the spice merchant, right? He's like, "I will help you, mother of dragons." Like the way he talks is like that, right?
Yeah.
Like very matter of fact, right? Like the way it's weirdly weird the way he kind of speaks to her, right? Yeah, you can throw the warlock there. Yeah, there's the scene. Yeah, good one. I will help
I'm
you,
getting good at this part.
mother of dragons. Yeah, no, it's good.
Yeah.
He's like, I have the dragons in the house of the undying. You have to come retrieve them from there. And she's like, what? You have my dragon? She's all confused, right? And
Yeah.
this is when Zaro, who's standing behind her this whole time, comes forward, and the warlock starts telling them all about how he made a deal with the king of Quarth, and basically to procure them for himself. And everyone's just like, king, there's no king here. What are you talking about? And then Zaro kind of steps up, somebody who we know has been very ambitious this whole time and kind of wants more, right?
Yep.
Basically says, well, yeah, I would be king and I can represent you and basically make this place more important on the world stage, like for all to see, like essentially, like he basically makes his move. And in response to this, people come up from behind all of the people, all the rest of the 13 that are sitting there and slit all their throats at once, right? They kill all the fucking people on the council. And then the warlock and him clearly have teamed up for this kind of, for whatever we're just.
Well, if
Right?
it was it was
It was
the
it.
warlock's face on everybody's body. Yeah, it was crazy, man.
Yeah. So that
Didn't know
happened.
who was who. Now all of a sudden we're getting warlock stuff going on here. It's like this is just going everywhere.
This is what I'm saying. We're seeing magic full force in this season a little bit, right? There's a lot of it.
Yeah.
I gotta say, compared to others. So, but yeah, anyways, they basically just did this to illustrate a point, about how he should, basically show themselves to the world more, and that he wants to take over. And they threaten the rest of the council and kill the rest of the 13 in this moment. And basically the warlock dude ends up doubling himself when Jorah Mormont shows up. He stabs him from behind. Then this fucking just dissipates. Like his whole body just disappears and it's just robes. Then he's like popping up all over the room, right? Like he's kind of bouncing all around with different versions of himself trying to fuck with them. And then they just flee. Like he grabs the Khaleesi there and just fucking runs out. And basically he says, yeah, if you want the dragons, you got to come meet me at the House of the Undying, right?
Undying, yeah.
That's where they are, right? That's where they're kind of being stationed.
That's where they're heading, right?
Well, to your question, that you mentioned this earlier in the season, Jay, and I didn't want to spoil it at that time. And this is the moment I kind of mentioned that I've been waiting to rewatch since I've watched this, because I've mentioned this House of the Undying to other people, and they don't recall it at all. Like people, the fans of the show, like I mentioned it to a couple people, and they had no recollection of this. And I remember it being like a weird kind of storyline. And remember, even you referenced, what was that thing that we were looking at in the background of this city when we kind of first came to it?
When it all looked burning.
That's right. So that's what this has all been kind of leading to, is this House of the Undying. And I just remember how cool and weird this warlock dude was. But I feel like he's a forgotten character as the series goes forward, right? Because like I reference this to other people and they don't recall this, right? So this is, not to spoil anything that's going to occur here, but this is like a series 2 storyline of this city, right? Like,
well, it's cool too.
Yeah, it is. But I think it's just, again, it's like just it's smaller story, I think, in the long run compared to everywhere that the Khaleesi goes, right, in her journey. Like this is something, I think, a footnote that people forget about in the grand scheme of things, right? Because I've mentioned this to other folks and they never recall this. So I'm happy to kind of rewatch this right now, because I think this is kind of pretty cool, the warlock dude. Like I was a fan of this. Like,
yeah.
Watching it, right? So.
It goes well with kind of dragons and stuff like that, but I don't know how much it goes well with I don't know. I mean, with the rest of the storyline, but yeah, I can see it. It kind of looks interesting.
Yeah. So Brienne of Tarth is guarding Catelyn Stark's tent, and when someone brings word of them catching the Kingslayer after he tried to escape, they tie him to chains and beat the shit out of him, and basically
Got him good.
then a man walks up and basically wants to kill him for killing the man's son, which we find out was the guard that he ended up choking out in his escape previously.
Yeah.
And Catelyn gets into a heated argument with him, basically saying like he's not allowed to kill him and he has no right. And do you know who you're fucking talking to? Did you forget? And she basically, don't worry, he will pay for his crimes. But right now, vengeance is not the answer, like what we're looking for. And Brienne basically raises her sword to this man for talking back to her and basically calls it treason. And as we know, now she's basically Catelyn Stark's, like she's been appointed by Catelyn Stark to kind of help her, right? So she's ready to kill the guy, right, for what he's doing, right? And basically tells him to, stand. They tell him to stand down because she represents Robb and you're king of the North, essentially. Like you can't just fucking come here and like tell me what to do, right? Like watch who you're talking to, essentially, right? And so that's an interesting scene. And then we cut back over to Cersei, who's with Tyrion. They're sitting there. He's reading a message about how Stannis is going to get to them in a few days. And, she basically seems very confident in their approach. Obviously, we know that they have all that wildfire shit beneath the city at this point. And she hints that basically she says that rain will fire, down from above, essentially on them. And she's like, oh, isn't that something father used to say all the time? Tyrion says to her, I'd be more confident in this if Joffrey started acting like an actual king. War is coming and father is not here to help. And this is when she mentioned, she throws in his face the fact, and he's like, well, you gave him whores to abuse. He's like, listen, I was wrong about that. He's like, I made a mistake, right? And she basically says, you think I haven't been trying to get him to be a better king? Like she in her defense, she's like, I've been trying, and he's just not really, we could tell already that she's been struggling with Joffrey, right? This whole time.
There's some good quotes in this scene too, right?
Well, she says she always hoped that Joffrey would be like Jaime, right? And she tried to get him to do more. And she compares the madness of everything going on to the Targaryens, right? She said,
well, yeah. He also said, yeah, it's hard to put a leash on a dog once you put a crown on his head.
That's a good one too. I didn't get that one. That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. But yeah,
she compares them to the Targaryens.
She's wondering if it's the incest in her head. That's what she's really alluding to. She doesn't say it so much in that scene, as like she doesn't straight out, but she says 2 out of 3, right?
What
and that meaning her, Jaime, and then look at little bitty Lannister.
And the Targaryens, same thing. Like there's a lot of incest that went on in that family, as we know, to strengthen the bloodline, right? So we know that.
Yeah, he said every time a Targaryen is born, the gods flip a coin. That's kind of funny too, man.
Tyrion reminds her, like, listen, you've beaten the odds. He's like, your other children are good. They're basically just admitting the fact that Joffrey's fucked. Like they're both like, yeah. This is ass, right? And he's the king. And after they have this conversation, she actually ends up crying. And he kind of just standing there. He almost is going to console her, but he doesn't. But they just have a moment, like a silent moment, as she's kind of weeping about this situation, because they're just like, yeah, this is a shitty situation, right? But like he tries to reassure her, like, don't worry, like you have some other beautiful children, like, we're gonna make it through this kind of thing, right? So
yeah.
And then Catelyn goes to speak with Jaime. He says that this might be his last night in this world, because obviously all the other people, the guards and everything, are really pissed the fact that he killed that man's son. And he's kind of like, yeah, this might be the last time that you see me, because it looks like there's going to be an uprising and they're going to kill him during the night. And then when fucking Brienne walks up with her, he's like, is that a woman? And then he's like, where did you find this beast?
Yeah.
Basically, right? And then she kind of just calls him out, saying like how he's broken his vows, and listen, he mentions like, listen, I've only been with Cersei, and of course now they know all this is out in the open. It's like, so I have more honor than dead Ned, as he refers to him, right? And then he basically says, what was the other woman that he was with? John's mother, that bastard child, right? And he fucking throws her right in her face, and she's just eating it, Catelyn. But he's right though. He's like, wasn't it a constant reminder of what he fucking did, and when he fucked another woman, and he brought him back and paraded him around in front of you, and he basically, it's like, don't pretend you hated that boy. And as we know from previous, you didn't love him all that much compared to the rest of her children, right? There's a moment where she basically, before he leaves for the night watch, she basically does away with him, where she's like, I don't want to see you right now. Like, because she's reminded of that fact, right? Like, it is a thorn in her fucking side that he was unloyal to her, and basically
Yeah.
everyone knew him as the bastard son as a result, right? So it's put a taint on their name essentially, right? It's tainted. But yeah, then this is when she gets him. He gets her so heated from the shit he's talking. She asks for Brienne for her sword, and she goes to
Yeah.
her, and then it cuts, and then it
Yeah.
cuts to Theon raising what looks like two dead children in front of the crowd, burnt to a fucking crisp in front of the crowd of Winterfell, basically saying like, this is what happens. This is Bran who ran away and his brother Rickon, and this is what fucking happens if you fuck around, essentially.
But
Right?
even Theon looks shocked a little bit in a sense. I think in a weird way because they literally put something on his leg, the kid's leg, on Bran's leg, so that it looked like he was still the cripple.
Yeah.
Right? They made it really look good. I don't, it had me going. I was like, "What the fuck's going on here, dude?" And I had to. I couldn't wait to watch the next episode because of that reason. I was like, "No way, they didn't kill him. I thought they got away." I'm thinking in my head, right? And I didn't realize that in that sense because I didn't catch that part at the farm where they said kind of what they were going to allude to.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't pick up on that as something that was going to happen. So that kind of threw me off as a shock right at the end.
Mhm.
Right. So, but yeah, man, it was fucking crazy, dude. That was a kind of a weird episode. A lot of stuff going on all at once.
Yeah, and a lot of there was a couple of big moments here, especially towards the end, right? With it looks like Jamie's gonna get killed here at the end, and then literally the last minute of the show, you have Theon raising what looks to be two burnt to a crisp bodies that belong to Bran and Rickon, right? Who they were chasing, right? So it's like they really left you guessing by the end of this episode, like oh my
Fuck
god,
happened.
yeah, these are big fucking things that had just happened here, right? And you start to see them as we learn in the next one, but we'll talk about that in the next one, guys. They're definitely playing with some of our emotions big time here. It is Game of Thrones, right? So, Jay, what do you think at the end
Well,
of this one? I mean, we could say, you know what? Save it for the next episode because we'll get into that.
well, all I have to say is I'm kind of lucky that I didn't have to sit there and wait week for week like the normal people did because that would have fucking put some stress on me after the end of that episode. So that's all I'm gonna say. I'm gonna leave you with that one.
Yeah.
But
There you have it.
Great episode.
Good episode, yeah. So the next episode, guys, is going to be episode 8 of season 2, The Prince of Winterfell. And as always, look for these weekly. We're back on schedule, it looks like, at this point. And if we ever run into a delay of some sort, you can always follow us on Instagram at Late Night Chat Network to be up to date with all the times that these episodes drop weekly for you guys. But we normally have been bringing them out on Thursdays every week. And you can also hit that little notification bell, guys, if you want to be notified of when these do come out. And then you don't even have to it's basically setting a reminder for yourself. You'll kind of get it right to your phone, a little notification letting you know of when these shows do drop weekly. Or like I said, follow us on Instagram for up-to-date updates every week. So hit that like button. There you go.
All right, you got to do it.
All right, guys.
You want some music?
Let's do the music.
Let's drop some music.
All right, guys.
Thank you.